Mia Bennett wasn't supposed to be at that gala at all. Her boss had fallen ill at the last minute, and now Mia, in a second-hand emerald dress she'd altered herself, was standing in a ballroom full of people worth more than her entire life savings, holding a glass of champagne she had no intention of finishing. Just one drink, she told herself. Then I'll disappear. She found her table. It was oddly empty, just one place setting. She sat down, relieved for a quiet corner. She had no idea she'd just sat in the one seat in that entire ballroom she was never supposed to touch. Because table 17 wasn't her table. She was at table 71, and it belonged to a man who was, at that exact moment, walking through the door 15 minutes late, furious about it, and about to find a stranger sitting in the one place he never shared with anyone. His name was Jackson Hayes, 34 years old, a tech billionaire, a man so private that most of what people knew about him was rumor. And when he saw the woman in the emerald dress at his private table, something happened that stunned everyone in the room. He didn't have her removed. He asked her to stay. What Mia didn't know yet was that this one accident, a smudged number on a ticket, was about to unravel her carefully guarded life. And what she really didn't know was that across the room, a woman named Victoria Sinclair was already watching, already furious, and already planning to make sure this nobody never got near Jackson Hayes again. Here's what happened. Mia stood to leave the second she realized a mistake, mortified. Jackson's hand shot out to steady her chair, and something passed between them at that touch, something neither of them expected. Instead of dismissing her, he pulled out the chair across from his own. "I'd like to hear more about your work," he said. A gasp rippled through the nearby tables. Jackson Hayes never did this. Never. Mia explained she worked at the Holloway Foundation, an education nonprofit for underprivileged kids. Jackson knew it by name, and he leaned in, genuinely curious, asking question after question. For the first time in years, Mia found herself in a real conversation with someone who actually seemed to be listening. Then her phone buzzed. Missed call from her babysitter. Panic flashed across her face. "I need to go. It's my daughter." "You have a child?" "Yes, Zoe. She's 6. Jackson didn't blink. He called his driver, walked her to the car himself through the rain, and pressed his private business card into her hand. "Call me tomorrow," he said. And as the car pulled away, Mia had no idea that this one night was about to change everything, or that the woman watching from the hotel entrance had already decided Mia Bennett was a problem to be handled. What Mia didn't know was that Jackson had a reason for approaching her that went far deeper than kindness, a reason tied to a devastating loss in his own past that he hadn't spoken about in years. And what she really didn't know was that the woman watching them from across the room had the money, the connections, and the motive to destroy her, starting with digging up the one secret from Mia's past that she tried hardest to bury. The next morning, Mia's 6-year-old daughter Zoe bounced on her bed asking if she'd dance with Prince. Mia laughed it off, but she couldn't stop thinking about the card in her purse. At work, her boss Gloria was floored. "You met Jackson Hayes?" "The Jackson Hayes." When Mia admitted he'd asked her to call, Gloria practically shoved the phone into her hands. "This could be huge for us." Mia called. Jackson answered on the second ring, his tone warmer than she expected, then invited her to lunch to discuss potential synergies between his company and the foundation. That night, a text arrived from an unknown number, looking forward to tomorrow. Jay. Curious despite herself, Mia looked him up. The articles told her what the public knew, a brilliant, intensely private man who'd built his empire from a single patent. But one line stopped her cold. He'd lost his younger sister to leukemia when he was 25, and it had shaped everything he'd built since. At lunch the next day, Jackson barely touched the folder of foundation paperwork Mia had prepared. Instead, he wanted to know about her, about Zoe, about the public school she attended. When Mia bristled slightly, defensive, Jackson said quietly, "I attended public school too, until a scholarship changed everything." It was the first crack in the armor she hadn't expected to see. Then his phone rang. He stepped away, came back visibly shaken, and cut the lunch short. Moments later, Mia got a text from a colleague. "Why is Victoria Sinclair asking questions about you?" She had no idea who that was. Not yet. Before she left, Jackson invited her, and Zoe, to dinner Friday. "Bring her," he said. "I know a place with excellent milkshakes." That night, Mia searched Victoria Sinclair's name and found photo after photo of the woman beside Jackson at past events, one with his hand at the small of her back. It shouldn't have bothered her. It did anyway. Friday came, and a massive bouquet arrived at Mia's office with a handwritten note from Jackson confirming dinner, sending Gloria into a fit of gleeful suspicion. Then his assistant called personally, asking about Zoe's food preferences and mentioning the restaurant had a play area. This wasn't a business dinner. Even Mia couldn't pretend otherwise in the mall. That dinner was where everything shifted, where Jackson would reveal a piece of his past he'd never told anyone outside his family, and where Victoria Sinclair would make her first move, a quiet, calculated threat that would force Jackson to choose between protecting his business empire or protecting Mia and her daughter. The restaurant wasn't fancy at all, a cozy family diner. Jackson showed up in jeans, crouched down to Zoe's eye level, and within minutes had negotiated shoulder rides in exchange for a finished dinner. Mia watched, stunned, as a guarded billionaire from the headlines turned into someone completely unguarded in front of her daughter. Over milkshakes, Jackson opened up about his late sister, 7 years younger, gone too soon, and admitted he now sponsored a children's hospital wing in her memory. Mia mentioned Victoria's name, watching his reaction carefully. His jaw tightened. Business connections, he said. Nothing more. Then he dropped the real news. He wanted to fund Holloway's summer program at triple what they'd hoped for, with one condition. He wanted Mia, not as an assistant, but as the program's director. I'm not qualified, she said. I'm an administrative assistant. With a master's in education you never mentioned, Jackson replied, and 5 years of teaching experience. He'd looked into her past. Deeply, it unsettled her until she realized how much more was coming. Days later, Jackson called her into his office, his expression grim. Victoria had uncovered the restraining order Mia had filed against her ex-husband years earlier, and the brutal custody battle that came with it. Sealed court records she'd used her father's legal connections to access. Victoria was threatening to leak it all, to paint Holloway as reckless for employing Mia. Jackson didn't hesitate. He told Mia he'd use a multi-million-dollar contract as leverage, offering it to Victoria's father on one condition. She'd back off completely. When Mia asked why he'd go that far for someone he barely knew, Jackson finally told her the truth. The night of the gala had been his late sister's birthday. He'd almost skipped the event entirely, drowning in grief, and then Mia had shown up, sitting in the wrong seat, treating him like a person instead of a bank account. "Do you know how rare that is in my world?" he asked. "To meet someone genuine." Before Mia could respond, Victoria burst into the office, having heard about the deal. She hurled insults at Mia and warned Jackson he'd regret this. Jackson had her escorted out without hesitation, no wavering, no apology. Then, in the middle of that fallout, Mia's phone rang. Zoe had fallen at school and hit her head. Jackson drove her there himself, sat with him through the doctor's visit, and stayed the entire evening, ordering dinner, entertaining Zoe with stories, easing the fear right out of the room. That night, after Zoe was asleep, Mia finally told Jackson everything about her past, her ex-husband's betrayal, the fear she'd lived through. Jackson listened without flinching, then shared the rest of his own story, how his sister's death had driven him to build his company around funding childhood cancer research in the first place. About those strings, Mia said softly, "I think I'd like to explore them. Slowly." Jackson smiled. Slowly sounds perfect. 6 months later, Mia stood at the edge of a field watching 30 children fly drones they built themselves. Holloway's summer program, now funded, expanded, and thriving beyond anything she'd imagined. Her new role as director had given her exactly the life she didn't know she'd been missing. Jackson arrived early, swept Zoe onto his shoulders exactly as he'd promised months before, and helped her troubleshoot her drone before the competition. Victoria's rumors had fizzled out completely, drowned out by Hayes Innovation's very public commitment to education, and Victoria herself had quietly retreated to Europe, her leverage gone. That afternoon, Jackson pulled Mia aside with 2 questions. The first, would she and Zoe move in with him, into a home with a yard and better schools nearby? The second, he said, wasn't a ring, not yet. He'd promised her slow. Instead, he opened a small box holding a silver compass pendant, the same kind his sister had once worn. "You and Zoe have been my compass," he told her. "You've shown me the way to a life I never thought I'd have." Mia let him fasten it around her neck, tears in her eyes. I love you, she said. Both of you, Jackson answered. And when you're truly ready, there will be a ring. As Zoe ran toward them, glowing with pride over her drone, Mia thought back to the night this all began. One smudged number, one wrong table, one moment of embarrassment that had somehow led her exactly where she was always meant to be. Because sometimes the best things in life start with a mistake.